Hello and welcome to Twist List. Today we are looking at 10 hermits who spent decades in isolation. While most of today's hermits seclude themselves as a form of passive protest against society, the underlying rationality behind such acts of isolation aren't much different than the reasoning used by some of the more famous historical hermits, who often spent decades in utter solitude for religious reasons. Number 6 on the list is 1813 to 1874. One of a handful of saints who began their lives entrenched in sin, Mary of Egypt was a prostitute in the city of Alexandria, servicing sailors who came into port. Fleeing to the city at the young age of 12, she refused money for her services, instead supporting herself mainly through begging. She later convinced a group of sailors to take her to the Holy Land. When she got there, Mary tried to enter a church, but the Holy Spirit kept her body from crossing the threshold. The sight of an icon of the Virgin Mary caused her to confess her sins and weep. Under the guidance of the voice of the Virgin Mary, she then went into the wilderness across the Jordan River, where she remained alone for 40 years. The future Pope Zosimus was said to have come upon Mary while on his own journey in the desert. She told him her entire story and he gave her communion. Later, after her death, Zosimus was preparing the burial rites when a lion appeared out of nowhere. It dug a grave for Mary with its paws before burying her itself. The fifth spot on the list is occupied by Pope Celestine V. The legendary founder of the Way of the Celestial Masters sect, otherwise known as the Way of the Five Becks of Rice, a branch of Taoism, Zhang Daling lived a relatively nondescript life as a hermit in the mountains of the Sichuan province of China. The nickname for his sect derived from the fact that people paid 5 becks of rice every year as a sort of membership fee. Daling began it after the famed Taoist philosopher Lao Tzu supposedly came to him in a vision, and it became the first organized Taoist church in Chinese history. Giving up his life of solitude to lead his new followers, Daling preached against what he saw as a lack of respect for truth and goodness in the people of China. The new sect also rejected the traditional sacrifices, which often involved blood and animals, in favor of joss sticks, incense, and boiled vegetables. Number 4 on the list is 5. Widely considered to be the first Christian hermit, Paul lived during the time of Christian persecution at the hands of the Roman Emperor Decius. One such persecution was that of a young male Christian who was tied to a comfortable bed and forced to have sex with a woman. He then bit his tongue off, spat it in the woman's face, and was martyred. Hearing of these and other persecutions, Paul fled into the desert, where he lived in a cave for anywhere from 60 to 90 years, depending on the source. While in the desert, Paul was fed by a raven who brought him dates and bread. He also encountered Anthony the Great in the wilderness, who had been told in a vision to seek out the elusive hermit. They spoke throughout the night, and Paul told Anthony that he was dying. He asked Anthony to bury him with a special cloak, which was back in the city. When Anthony returned, Paul was dead and his soul was being lifted to heaven by a host of angels. Unfortunately, Anthony had forgotten his shovel, but, similar to the story of Mary of Egypt, 2 lions showed up and dug a hole with their claws. At the third place we have, AD 344 to AD 421, Julian of Norwich is perhaps best known for being the author of the first book written in the English language by a woman, her magnum opus Revelations of Divine Love. She's now known primarily through that book, and while most of the details are missing, we do know that Julian was already in her cell, a room attached to a church, by the age of 30. It was at the age of 30 that a sickness struck her, one which was so serious that she was given the last sacraments. However, she pulled through and the visions she received inspired her to write about the love of God. She often struggled with the evil ravaging the world at the time, and she fought to reconcile that idea with the concept of God's love. When Julian questioned God and pressed him for an explanation, he assured her that she need not bother, she would forever remain ignorant of the reasoning. Her year of death, as well as the cause, is a mystery. All that is known is that she was dead by 1423, as her cell was empty. At the second spot is Zhang Daling. Baal Shem Tov, born Israel ben Eliezer and often called Bisht, is best known as the father of Hasidism. His life is shrouded in legend and fable, and as such most of the details of his life are a topic of debate. He is said to have been born to parents who were nearly 100 years old. He was orphaned at a young age when they both died of old age. After a relatively nondescript young life in which he worked in various synagogues and schools, Bisht went into the Carpathian Mountains, where he lived and meditated on mysticism and spirituality. His reputation as a healer spread far and wide, as did the fact that he conversed with and dressed like simple people, something which irked some parts of the Jewish community. Although he never wrote down any of his teachings, they were recorded by his followers and later formed the basis of Hasidism. And finally, at number 1. 3. An English beat group widely popular in the 1960s, Hermits formed in 1962 in Manchester. Younger than either the Rolling Stones or the Beatles, they were seen as more appealing to the teens of the day, especially those in the United States. Their most popular songs included I'm Into Something Good, Silhouettes, and I'm Henry VIII, I Am, a British music hall song dating back to 1910. The group disbanded in 1971 after years of declining album sales.
The fifth spot on the list is occupied by turquoise trade. What diamonds represent today, turquoise did for the ancient Pueblo Indians. Their love of the blue-green mineral apparently knew no bounds. Over 200,000 pieces were found in Chaco Canyon alone. Initially, it was believed that Chaco got all its gems from a nearby mine and imported some more. A closer chemical look determined that only the elites living in Pueblo Bonito used a nearby mine and possibly kept the location a secret. This didn't hamper the Pueblo on the street. The turquoise network was a remarkable trading effort that existed across Colorado, Nevada, and southeastern California. When pieces from Nevada were tested, they busted another belief that the flow existed just for the benefit of the canyon
Number 4 on the
residents.
list is
The Nevada turquoise originated in Colorado and New Mexico, hinting that the network was more of a two-way affair than exclusive the bodies of 14 individuals over 330 years, 800 to 1,130. A wealth of artifacts support the belief that these men and women belonged to the elite who ruled Pueblo society, their power spanning hundreds of miles. It's uncommon to find so many in a crypt in the southwest. These people were all family with identical Mtna, descending from a single female ancestor. There's still no clear view of how Chacoan society was structured. This valuable discovery adds an elite family who controlled Chaco Canyon for centuries, showed power was hereditary through the matrilineal lineage and that they were likely behind the rise of this remarkable society. This made researchers curious about their relationships to each other. Testing for family ties, they focused on mitochondrial DNA.
Place we have
advanced
the
geometry.
Findings were so
surprising that the team
national
thought the samples had been contaminated. The
The
archaeological
archaeological
site
the
was
results
built
were
around
correct.
1200. The southwestern Pueblos used it for ceremonies and solstice tracking. During a study to see if the observatory was used to watch stars as well, something unexpected happened. The same measurements and patterns began to reveal themselves in the temple's architecture. Near-perfect squares and different types of triangles repeated at key points across the site, including equilateral triangles, 45-degree right triangles, and Pythagorean triangles. Incredibly, even the golden rectangle showed up. The latter was a favorite of ancient Greek and Egyptian architects. The common unit of measurement at the temple was 30 centimeters, around 1 foot. What makes this a near-genius endeavor is that the Pueblos had no system for numbers or a written
When
language.
archaeologists
Yet,
found a
they
Pueblo
mastered
village lacking
advanced
key
geometry.
traits.
They thought
Today,
they had found a
that
rebel
would be the
colony.
same as trying to
There were
design
no
and
multi-story
build a house
homes
without
crucial
numbers
for
or
trade and
records.
ritual, no underground kivas for elites to gather during meetings and ceremonies. Nicknamed Blue Jay, the settlement lies 70 kilometers south from the heartbeat of Pueblo culture, Chaco Canyon. The distinct lack of form proposed that the residents of Blue Jay didn't play well with the power center and refused to follow certain traditions. The 11th century settlement consisted of around 60 households and plazas. Decades passed before new technology, in the form of a remote-controlled drone, revealed different scenery. Its infrared scans found structures
And finally,
beneath the
at
desert
number
floor.
one,
Why
the
they
subterranean
vanished.
ruins
When the
included a
ancestral
courtyard
Pueblo nation
facing large
disappeared,
rooms,
they did so
walls
without any
and
clear
tombs
reason. It
deep
remains one of
circular shapes
archaeology's
consistent with
greatest ceremonial
puzzles.
kivas.
A new study
One
might
showed
pin it on
the
a
perfect
series of
dimensions for a kiva.
During a
This
span
could
of
change
500
everything.
years,
A religious
700
building
to
at Blue Jay would mean the village conformed with Chaco
dry
Canyon's
periods
influence.
occurred,
And the worst at last. Each time, the destruction of crops instigated civil inequality, unrest, and violence. Belief
Thanks for
systems and
watching.
rituals
If you
changed to
enjoyed
deal
this
with the
video
crisis.
and would like to see more,
The
then
weather
please
data
hit the
and social
subscribe button.
changes with every drought indicates that the Pueblo Vanishing Act was merely a cultural transition and eventual abandonment of their trademark traditions and sites. Scientists gathered information from over 1,000 sites related to the Pueblos and 30,000 tree ring dates. Together, they produced an incredible year-by-year view of the region's weather. Across the board, a recurrent cycle of drought could be seen. Each time, it coincided with major changes within the prehistoric society. If researchers are right, the Pueblos' fate was sealed centuries before their culture petered out.